Well, Charles, no music today.
We're live at 5?
We're live. We're kind of hitting all the high notes because, you know, there's people who really like the walking around videos. There's people who like the road trip videos. There's people who say, get off the road trip, get back in the apartment and get down to brass tacks. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And in chasing this sound problem, I've totally redone this iPad. And so we're missing some graphics here, but I'm going to bring those back in just a moment. What will we be discussing today, Charles?
Well, we're going to discuss a few things that were not really that easy to discuss on walking around episodes, because we really will benefit both from your knowledge of Photoshop and your knowledge of many technical things having to do with images. We need to put those images up on a screen and compare them. And then in terms of getting into details, we need as well to display documents and look at elements of many, many different documents. So we're going to do a mixture of that. I propose that we do clean out some of the cobwebs first and then dive into the EcoHealth, Dr. Fauci, U.S. government fraud, frankly, that's been going back. This is not an exercise that began in 2013 or 2014. This goes way back. And it is really following the business model that we've seen so many other places, the Clinton Foundation, the Gates Foundation, American Conservative Union. What you do when you want to perpetrate a charity fraud or a massive fraud, you come up with something that sounds believable as the name of a charity. And then you make sure that you have multiple different variations on the theme. You have charities with the same name but are organized in different states in the United States, or maybe multiple different states and multiple international locations. You have something that might be called the American Conservative Union itself, and then the American Conservative Union Foundation, but its real names are both not with the V, they're both American Conservative Union and American Conservative Union Foundation. We saw that recently with the I'm addicted to Chardonnay former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton tweeting out, math is not really her strong suit, tweeting out that she wanted everybody to accept the RSVP, or to RSVP to attend the celebration, I think it was this past Friday, of the 20th anniversary of the Clinton Foundation's operation. Well, the Clinton Foundation was incorporated. It wasn't really organized, I don't think. It was incorporated on October 23rd, 1997. And I guess she's living in the universe where she's the president of the United States, and math is racist, so she doesn't have to worry about math. But there's no way this would be the 20th anniversary in 2021 of something that was created in October of 1997, unless you're using like some different base of expression than base 10. Maybe you could...
Freebase.
Exactly.
It's an entirely crackhead government at
Crack
this point.
base, exactly. So what I propose, Jason, first is that we compliment the art department, give them another raise. This is a great poster.
Thank you.
There's some subtleties that the audience probably may or may not get immediately, but nice of you to put the Chinese Communist red font in there for the very...
Well, it's amazing to me, Charles. I mean, I've said it before, but this is probably the most dramatic about face in terms of, you know, taking something that they were saying was a quote unquote conspiracy theory. I should be mad at myself for having if this was court, I'd get yelled at right now.
Ding.
But, right. I mean, this is literally everything with them now saying like, oh, well, maybe it did come from a lab in China. And it wasn't like just one news report. This is now every single channel, CNN, NBC, New York Times, all saying, oh yeah, maybe it did come out of the lab.
Yeah. The thing where we canceled everybody who brought that stuff up, starting right around the time of the election and forward to the present, where we kicked people off social media and got them fired from their jobs and all that for saying that, and busted Jason's channels and other channels.
That happened to me.
Right, yeah. We made a mistake. Nobody's perfect.
But I am going to now I'm going back to look at each video that's received a strike, what it was for, because they don't tell you. So you don't really know. It's not like, oh, well, you know, this person said X, so whatever. I could go out in the street, conceivably, and just record, and if somebody says something that YouTube doesn't like, maybe I'm in trouble. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and formulate a legal strategy for getting my channels back.
You should.
Multiple channels have been struck, and
But when you deal with something, when I deal with something I believe is complex, the way I end up trying to understand it and frequently understanding it is by breaking the complex entity into pieces to try to discern, is there a unifying set of principles that governs the complexity?
do you know what that reminds me of?
What?
There's something, how do you eat an elephant?
All right. Yeah.
One bite at a time.
Exactly. So in the case of General Electric, when I started on that one, that really was, in terms of the volume of paper to consider, it was a tremendous amount of work. And what in the end made it quite simple to see the fraud was when you realized that General Electric was a very bad bank housed inside a very complex conglomerate, but that all you needed to do was take the very bad bank and subtract it from the consolidated total, and you could then see the bad bank in stark relief and everything else in stark relief. It didn't matter what was in the everything else. If you look at the consolidated picture, supposedly the revenues were going up, the profits were going up, the cash flow. In reality, the revenues were going down, the profits were going down, the cash flows were hemorrhaging. And you realize, on the one hand, I have a very bad bank, and I also have now a very bad collection of shit in the balance. And everyone's saying, this is great. This is opposite land. It's not great. It's crap. And it took about a year of convincing people, and then the luck of GE stumbling in April of 2008 and missing their forecast to get people to realize, actually, it is a pile of crap. And the stock is up off its ass from where it was at 6 and change, but it's still way under where it was in 2007-8 when I started on it, when it was around 40. And the market's higher.
And now, in addition to a very bad bank, you've got very bad medicine.
Exactly. And so you move from I'm trying to draw similarities between or among GE, the Clinton Foundation, and this COVID fraud.
Yeah.
So when you move on to the Clinton Foundation, I mean, no disrespect to the people of Arkansas, but back in 2002, when they started building this shithole, this library, it really should have cost, and by all rights did cost, about $80 million of real money. But they manufacture financial statements, and when you tear them apart, as I and others have done, you can find that the financial statements have roughly doubled the estimated cost, the real true cost of the library. So now it's $160 million. So whether it was $80 million or $160 million, that's an interesting set of questions. People get all excited about that. That's what the New York District Attorney is going to get excited about with Trump, most likely. You said that this building cost 160, and it really cost 80, so you got an extra $40 million of bank loan from the bank by inflating the value. It's going to be the argument they're going to try maybe on the Trump organization. But here's a living example of a piece of crap that is housing some of the papers of the 8 years of the Clinton presidency. There's been no independent stress testing. Where are the other papers? Look at this river. It's brown. It's brown for a reason.
Remember, Charles, when I went there, I discovered this bizarre sculpture right here that I hadn't noticed. And it's some sort of like winged, almost, whoa, are we in the water now? Oh, we're inside the thing. I didn't know that you could do that.
Wow.
But this sculpture outside, they don't really want you to see. It was some sort of it looked like a demon to me.
Right. Well, but so whether the thing costs, whether it's a double wide perched atop a dirt infested river, whether it costs 160 or 80 is not really the major issue. The real issue is, how in the hell did a presidential foundation that's supposed to be run by a board that's broadly representative of the American public, not all people who support only the Clintons and loathe Republicans, how does this entity, which is supposed to be just operating inside this park, how do they then, beginning by 2004 and arguably in 2003, how do they then fly around the world and, quote, fight HIV and AIDS internationally using nobody serious to do that, with no audit and raise billions of dollars, including $700+ million from Bill Gates and his foundation directly, and through Unitaid, which was something he created with the crook Rajat Gupta and with the idiot Chelsea Clinton.
But Kevin Spacey and that comedian aren't serious people to be
Well,
fighting it.
they're fine. But this gets back to, so when the business model for charity fraud is you pick something that fathers and mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers and great-grand whatever will say, that is a problem. Why don't we should solve that problem. There shouldn't be
AIDS and
HIV and AIDS. And the surface level argument is, we've put our parameters, as Fauci would say, around China. We figured out that the number of people who could have HIV and AIDS is a gazillion people.
It's everybody.
Everybody. And then beyond that, we figured out that the cost of treating this HIV and AIDS, because I'm going to make sure in the health system here in America, we love our drug companies. They're the ones who pay off the politicians. So we've got to keep the cost of HIV and AIDS medicine in countries where people can afford the treatment very high, because that's how you pay off all the scoundrels in the political system and the media complex. But what we're going to make the argument is that we need nonprofit organizations to buy this medicine and distribute it for free in the countries where the people can't afford the treatment. We'll lower the price there because the market there is de minimis. Actually, they're poor countries that nobody can afford it, so we don't care if the prices are low. We weren't going to sell there anyway. We'll just get some company like Ranbaxy to pretend that they have HIV/AIDS medicine, and we'll get some idiot, Bill Clinton, who's too busy hanging around with Epstein and fending off his demons around. We'll let him fly all over the world and write these glossy reports saying he's doing good work, when the truth is people in America and Western Europe are getting raped by the pharmaceutical industry on the HIV and AIDS stuff. Taxpayers are getting raped in the United States, and also they're funding these do-gooder schemes for HIV and AIDS that have to date cost over $100 billion. And in the case of one of the main operators of that, the Global Fund, an insider's estimate is that 75% of all the money that went through the Global Fund, the total sum through that fund is more than $60 billion. 75% of that money cannot be accounted for.
Wow.
So there's a scheme centrally involving Fauci, by the way. Fauci was inside. Before he got to be the COVID czar, he was the person who was centrally involved, in quotes, fighting HIV and AIDS with Dr. Scarf, Dr. Birx.
I got another question for you, Charles. One of the things that make computer processors expensive is that there's a high degree of failure in the manufacturing process. And when you get different speeds of them, they take the best ones, and then there's a certain tolerance range that they can still sell at lower performance and whatever. And I think something similar happens with pharmaceuticals. Like, we were hearing all the conditions under which this vaccine, if it's not stored at the right temperature, So I'm sure there's variations where they might say, well, you know what, these weren't temperature stored, so maybe they're not good for America, but we could give them away to somebody else.
Right.
And that's a way that they reduce their financial losses by taking some payment for something that would otherwise be thrown away and turning over something to somebody that's essentially crap if you define some lower tolerance.
Well, and this is why there's a lady, a female author called Catherine Eban. We've talked about her Dirty Medicine story in Fortune, and then her book, Bottle of Lies, both of which are excellent. This is somebody who I think leans to the left and has done an excellent analysis of the disaster that was the push for generic drugs is what she's talking about, but the generic drugs, some of them that she focuses upon, are generic HIV and AIDS drugs. And so here's an area we have a monumental failure. I mean, when you blow $100 billion, you got to be really, really fucked up to do that. I mean, blow $100 billion or more. Right, yeah. Exactly. I mean,
a lot of Louis Vuitton shoes or something.
I mean, you've got to have, Amazon warehouses filled with mink coats. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of money to blow financially, but the human cost, one of the ways that I believe when the full story is told, the human cost is that the Faucis and the Clintons and the people who, in theory, could believe that they were so smart that they were going to solve all the world's problems, Ira Magaziner is one example, by their sloppiness, by their arrogance, have done have destroyed millions of lives and will destroy millions more lives around the world by unleashing these adulterated drugs into countries populated principally by brown and black people, where we were not the controls, there was not the medical infrastructure. And these are people who all were tripping over each other, believing that one or more of them should validly hold Nobel Peace Prizes for all their good works. I mean, I think the report that's coming out, I'm making this up now, the report that's coming out about aliens is going to be all about how the aliens decided that human beings needed to be as far away from them as possible. And that's why none of them are ever going to come to us. They're so far away. We're so far away from the real action.
There's something pretty important, though, we're not going to focus on, but I want to raise, because we've been asking this question, why would there be such a dramatic pivot from this, there's no way it came from a lab, to, Dr. Fauci, how do you know them Chinese doctors didn't lie to you? He's like, well, they put it on Facebook. I'm friends with China on Facebook. And they couldn't possibly have lied. Or maybe they did. But the thing that he's not talking about, Charles, and this is important, in 2005, the NIH and a bunch of really, I don't understand what the hell they were doing, but they went to Alaska. They dug up this grave at a U.S. Army base where a bunch of soldiers who died in World War I from Spanish flu were in a mass grave.
What? Spanish flu?
Well, yes, but is that racist against Spain?
It's anti-nationalist, I guess.
But that's what they called it. Anyway, the 1918 pandemic flu, these guys died from it. They dug them up, they scraped their lung tissue, and then using genetic whatever...
brought it back. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And they're saying that they brought it back to study how it would affect humans, but it's like it wasn't affecting humans until you brought it back. Now, this crackling, I've gone nuts trying to compensate. And it's just, there's no getting it. So real quick, while that comes back online, the other thing that's interesting that's happening, Charles, people can now, in addition to watching us on YouTube while we last, recently Rumble has begun offering live streaming. So for people who don't like big tech, they can be watching our live streams on Rumble. That's really fantastic. And of course, everybody can always sponsor the show by going to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And the great news is that I have actually gotten an official tech support ticket from Patreon. So they're working on resolving the bug that their chief technology officer helped me identify that will allow sponsors on patreon.com to enjoy the restored library. So that should be happening very, very soon. But he's not talking about this resurrected Spanish flu, which was itself essentially a gain of function bit of research.
Right.
And that's the problem.
So just going back to the train of thinking. So we have the Clinton Foundation. They say they need $200 million to set up a library, and instead they raise many billions of dollars doing who knows what exactly all over the world, probably diverting lots of money and doing it outside the ambit of the law. Fauci and company see that quote's success, and they say, okay, I'll see you at the library, and now I'll raise you, and we'll do HIV and AIDS, and we'll blow 100. They get that done, 100 billion, and they say, well, let's get ready to steal trillions. Let's say we've got this coronavirus thing coming, and that's something where we not only need to steal trillions, we need to shut down the 2020 election, and shut down other elections around the world, so we can just put our chosen people. We need to find the dumbest fucking people in the world to put them into the top of the food chain. So Joe Biden's the obvious candidate for president. Who knows who's going to come up in 2022?
But the dumbest people are all of those around the world who just accept what idiots like Fauci tell us and accept that there's no way it came from a lab. It's obviously bat soup. You're a conspiracy theorist.
Well, and also think about, I have many disabilities, but one of them is being the eldest son of a PhD in nuclear physics. So from the very early days at school, people would say, oh, so your father's a scientist. You're going to be a scientist. I'm like, no, I'm not. I want to be a fireman. I want to do something very different than your father. It's a natural thing to want to try to do something different than what your dad, at least in my case. And so if you think about the people you know who went through high school and went to college, how many of them are comfortable with science? How many said, in ninth grade, I want to be a physicist, or I want to study molecular biology? Not many people want to do that. And the problem is that those who do want to do it tend to be super smart people. So you go into the room and say, I think I'll try that. And you go in the room and there are these, everybody in the class got an 800 on their math SAT and you got a 400 or something like that. And you wonder why you can't make it through 2 days of science. So people...
But at the same time, Charles, aren't there people who get that 800 on the math SATs and then say, I know, let's resurrect the woolly mammoth. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, well, there's a difference between intelligence. You have to have intelligence and you have to have a deep sense, an innate sense of what's right and what's wrong. And that's, I think, not the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. I think the people who are promoting these brain-dead ideas, it's a Hippocratic Oath. Listen to me, do as I say, not as I do, and I'm just going to go and be a monopolist and create these crooked foundations and rig elections and screw around however I want and pay off people to write stories and books about me that I'm really a genius. And that's what we're dealing with here. And so anyway, we saw the HIV/AIDS thing. We see the same player in Fauci heavily involved in the COVID thing.
Yeah.
And now for the first time, as you rightly point out, a year ago, when we were doing these, we went to Columbus Circle right around now. And I remember, I think it was right around now. And we followed one of those BLM people and Hawk Newsom down Broadway. We were very close to him and listening to and they were just flat up. They said, listen, we're Marxists. We're not trying to fix the system. We're trying to blow this fucking shit up. Direct quote, we're trying to blow this shit up. Oh, that's reasonable.
Well, let's get out of your way and let that happen.
Yeah, well, let's give you a tax exemption for that. You don't even need to fill out the paperwork. You're trying to blow shit up? By all means, we'll give you a government subsidy.
I'll tell you what, though, Charles, under President Stupid Joe, blowing up the United States of America actually is standing in the footsteps of government. So they do deserve a tax deduction for that.
The Blow Shit Up Foundation. But anyway, so before we're going to tease a little bit, we've got a lot to tell you about EcoHealth. And we first brought this up, EcoHealth, I want to say, whenever it was...
Well, you brought it up. I didn't know anything about it until you told me.
But I'm saying on this broadcast, we brought it up and we pointed out a bunch of stuff. We have more details, but now that Maria Bartiromo and the Fox Complex and even the Sunday Times of London and people in the mainstream press are folks that are saying, wait a minute, what exactly was this EcoHealth? When did it get created? Who's running it? Why is it doing all this stuff? We have answers for you on that. And we're going to take some time to go through it. But first, we want to clean up some old business, which I think we can start with either... we'll start with the related party thing, Jason.
Sure.
Because that ties into the most recent thing we've been talking about, the American Conservative Union, the American Conservative Union Foundation. To remind people who are not as familiar with this or maybe joining us for the first time, why we got into this. We got into this because Jason had been accepted to go to CPAC in 2021, earlier this year. Was it late February, early March? I forget which.
I think it was March.
Yeah, early March, I think it was. And you got into your jalopy and you filled it up with stuff.
No, that was a brand new car.
Oh, yeah. Now it's a
jalopy.
Now it's not.
Getting fixed.
You got into that thing and you drove.
I did drive for hours and spend money at a hotel and take time. I mean, it was a big...
But you confirmed that you would be there. I mean, you
Absolutely.
got it.
I got an email confirmation from them saying, print this barcode out and scan it and get your credentials. And I went there and nothing came out. And then I started talking to them and like, that's weird. And it went up the chain and up the chain and up the chain until they just said, yeah, you're uninvited. Get out of here.
Right. And you got then kicked out of the hotel as well, right?
And I mean, I was very calm. I was very aware of getting angry is not going to help me. So let me just calmly wait for them to decide. And I just kept asking, why am I not allowed in? And they said, we're not sure. Let's talk to this next person. And then the final person just said, there's nothing we can do. Get out. Go talk to these guys. And I turned around and it was two guys in black suits, Hyatt Security, threw me out. They shared my phone number with Hyatt Security, which I didn't read the contract, but if I'm giving them my information in order to be admitted, and then they don't admit me, do they still have the legal right to share my information for whatever purpose? And I didn't create any security incident or risk at the hotel.
Well, in the first instance, we've revealed, and we'll pound the notion that there is no such thing as CPAC. There is no organization called CPAC. It is a doing business as name, I believe, which has not been properly registered anywhere in the country, and for which the American Conservative Union Foundation or the American Conservative Union, neither organization, in my view, has the legal right to hold CPAC out as being validly tax exempt, yet both organizations have done so. So the who in all this is a big question. So if we go to the...
One other quick thing before we get into this. I've been in communication with the American Conservative Union and have invited Matt Schlapp to come on the show and discuss this with us, but because of the holiday weekend, he wasn't available today. Hopefully, we'll have an opportunity to speak directly with him or some legal representative of the thing, and they'll have an opportunity to tell us if there's something that we're not quite getting.
Yeah, I don't think that'll go so well for them, but I'm very happy to have that kind of discussion. In fact, since you raise it, the person who is the in-house general counsel, what's the guy's name again, Jason? David Safavian, S-A-V, I think it is. Is that it? Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. This gentleman has only recently become involved with the American Conservative Union and possibly with the foundation. He has, to put it mildly, a checkered history. We're not going to beat the crap.
GSA.
This is the entity that hands out all the government contracts. Right. So, to run afoul, to have this guy appointed in that job and then to have him run afoul, there seemed to me to be multiple points at which this gentleman has made very bad decisions, culminating in his being convicted twice, once dismissed on appeal, second pardoned. This is not the first person. While I think criminals should have an opportunity to be rehabilitated, this is not the first person I would pick as my in-house counsel to try to explain away a 20-year, maybe longer than that, ongoing unprosecuted criminal fraud, charity fraud. I wouldn't be hiring this guy. I'd try to pick somebody. You want to say, over here we've got a pile of people who've been to prison. Then we got a bunch of people here who've been to prison but have been pardoned. And over here we have some people who've never gotten in trouble with the law. It's like that pile. That's the pile I'd be looking for. But anyway, so for Mr. Safavian, and sometimes lawyers like him get in trouble because they think that they can, focus on the minutia over here and ignore the simple rule that says you're a related organization to another organization if you use the same name, operate with the same phone number, have the same officers and directors, subsidize one another, you're probably related, okay? If you're related, you have to make disclosures about all transfers from one entity to the other in both organizations' public filings, right?
Even if I think it's going to upset you?
Even if it's going to upset. Rats!
It's that close.
Exactly. And here again, when you talk about let's not put it on your back. We talk about the Chart Group, one of the firms I created. We were in the business. We attracted investors and said, look, we are going to be creating a series of investment funds that are all going to be interrelated, and those are going to invest in companies. They might cross-invest. So long as you tell your investors in a for-profit world that's what you want to do, and they have a reasonable opportunity to study your offering materials, and they're allowed, because of their financial situation, to invest in illiquid things, so long as you go through all that and you file the paperwork, that's all fine. Your investors are in the game to make a profit. They all understand that you put money at risk, and you might make 10 times your money or you might lose all your money. But you're not in the charity world when you do this.
Well, and also, by the way, if I start a company that, like if I had a 3D consulting company that taught you how to make 3D movies that was intended to help my business of making 3D movies, that's totally okay. I'm allowed to do that.
Right, but you should disclose it. You should say, the principle of all that, if you have shareholders in each of the companies, if it's not 100% Jason Goodman, the principle is, and sorry for that, the principle is that any transfers between these related party organizations should be at arm's length. In other words, willing buyer, willing seller, neither under duress, negotiating with the correct amount of information, have a heated discussion, there's tension, and you agree on a price for the service. But when you get involved mixing charities, supposed tax-exempt organizations, with political activities and with for-profit activities, using the same collection of people from the same addresses or similar addresses and mingling all sorts of stuff.
Families.
The same, exactly, the same families. That's where you can get into serious trouble. So, Mr. Safavian, I'm going to ask you, I will not meet with you or with Matt Schlapp until you've go back to 2001, and we put this up to make it really easy for you, not to be patronizing, but the Schedule A thing. That's it, yeah, okay. If we go to page 12, not that I'm familiar with this document, this is the instruction form. You notice here, to make it really simple, spoon feeding, okay? Part 7, information regarding transfers to and transactions with transactions and relationships with non-charitable exempt organizations. Let's back up a second. The American Conservative Union Foundation, in theory, if it existed, which it doesn't lawfully, if it existed, it might be, if it complied with the law, a charitable tax-exempt organization. By that meaning donors to the foundation can take a deduction against their personal income taxes for their donation because it's a public charity if it's run properly. A 501c4, on the other hand, is what the American Conservative Union is supposed to be. And the American Conservative Union, I would argue, also does not lawfully exist if you go back to the very beginning and look at the papers that I've been able to look at. So here, this is the form, the drama between that we've been investigating in depth so far begins with the year 2001. So these are the instructions for the 990, which would have to be filled out for both the union and for the foundation. And in fact, there is a 990 for both the union and for the foundation. You can find the 990s for the union in the Massachusetts Attorney General page. You can find the union 990s continue starting in 2003 on ProPublica. The foundation 990s go back to 2001. So we pick one of the earliest years. If we could stay on that page for a second, Jason. Here it says, it defines what a non-charitable exempt organization is. It says it's something that is not exempt under Section 501c3. Okay, that would be a 501c4. Okay, keep going down. Okay, a non-charitable exempt organization, the union, is related to or affiliated with the reporting organization, the foundation, if the two organizations share some element of common control, and notice the word is or a historic and continuing relationship exists between the two organizations. You pass this test, okay, right here, this first test. A non-charitable exempt organization is unrelated to the reporting organization if the two organizations share no element of common control and, not or, and a historic and continuing relationship does not exist between the two organizations. These are clearly related organizations. And from the get-go in 2001, they should have been reporting the details of all transfers back and forth. When you start you hold these two organizations out as being separate, and then you hire a goofball to be the director of administration, and you hire knuckleheads to be your accountants, and you don't pay them any money.
Felons to be the lawyers.
Felons to be the lawyers. What do you
perfect.
What do you expect?
What could go wrong?
Exactly.
Okay, we got clicking here. 1 second. I'm going to fix it real quick. A real huge problem. And I think the only thing I can really do is wait for Apple to update this software here. But we've got to work around.
All right. So that's just to say that there should be related party disclosures involving the union and the foundation going back to 2001, and there are not. And the disclosures that I find in all the 990s going back to this time frame are basically wrong. They don't foot. They're not consistent. They're not done. You need to use not only generally accepted American accounting principles, but there's a key phrase that people throw around and then don't think about. Generally accepted accounting principles consistently applied, meaning that if you have two organizations that are related, you don't say, over here, we're going to use accrual-based accounting. That is where it's not cash drawer accounting, but accrual basis accounting, which is the proper way to run any sort of complex company. You don't say, okay, for the union, we're going to use accrual. For the foundation, we're going to use cash. And then for CPAC, we're not even going to tell you what it is. We're just going to put it all over here. And we're going to call that due to from. That's the due to from account. And we're not going to explain any of that. And that's kind of like Hollywood-based accounting or media-based accounting.
When money goes in a hole and God knows what happens after that.
Right. Well, it's like Hollywood. It's you're constructing fiction, so you invent a tale and you get some attractive-looking or unattractive-looking people involved in the telling of the tale, but you do your level best to hide how much money you're laundering and stealing and moving around the world. That's not what you're supposed to do in the not-for-profit. It should be not-for-profit, not for fraud sector. It shouldn't be these charities shouldn't be vehicles for fraud. So clearly they're related. Clearly all of the 990s that I've seen so far, if you've got related party organizations, you have to disclose the flows in Schedule A. Later they introduced a schedule called Schedule R, where you have to be even more specific and explain the basis for every single transaction back and forth. You should have real accounting firms that are paid real amounts of money to double check all the potential conflicts. You can't have in a public charity, which the foundation is supposed to be, you cannot start peopling it only with members of your family, having sweetheart deals with members of your family and members of other families that have contributed by the organizations they run, the NRA. And we'll get to the NRA in another broadcast. I mean, as bad as the American Conservative Union Foundation is, and as much as I love authentic conservative principles, the NRA is even worse. I mean, at least the American Conservative Union Foundation and union don't pay their people millions of dollars a year and let their people get involved flying around private jets and
they're just shooting elephants
and
missing.
Right, and missing. Yeah. So that's one key thing to piece of housekeeping to go through. We've gone through it. The second one is to draw on your great, if you want to draw on your great strengths with Photoshop, we might go into.
Sure.
So
well, actually, this is a really special presentation we've created for today, Charles.
Right.
We're going to do some interactive Photoshopping while you review this.
All right. So the first question, it's interesting. The guy Stuart Dean we had on several times. When I first was listening to him, I thought he was going very, very slowly through it and maybe wasting some time. But then I realized he actually had hit on genius level stuff. I mean, that when you should start when you look at something, and just because a magician says this is a 990 for an organization, that doesn't mean that it's a 990 for an organization. You don't really know whether the stamp that's on the 990 was a stamp put on it by the IRS, unless you contact the IRS. People could manufacture replicas of that stamp. You don't know, and it's a crime to do that, obviously, but we're talking about criminal activity here, so maybe people have done that. You don't know, unless you start checking, whether the signature that is listed at the bottom is for David A. Keene, is the same David A. Keene, is in fact his signature. But what you do know, and what is so very much different than the GE fraud, is that the paperwork that is signed for these foundations, these foundations, these charities, in almost every case, you have to, there's legend above the signature that says, I'm signing this under penalties of perjury.
Right.
These are federal penalties of perjury. When you do the state filing, you got to do the same thing, right? So it's not the best idea in the world, even if you are happily married, to start signing your husband's signature in a form where you're also stealing from the organization because you're in charge, on who knows why, you're in charge of operations and government relations with government entities. You really shouldn't be doing that.
And when it comes to thinking about under what circumstances a person who's not ignorant of that information would do it, the only thing I can think of is that they would do it if they're guilty of something way worse than perjury. So we have to do this to avoid getting to that other thing.
Right, exactly. So if we do the interactive thing, the thing that you had up there, you managed to retrieve a letter from
Well, this is from David Keene when he was in charge of the NRA, and I forget what I was looking for at this particular moment.
Well, it's excellent because of the date. Look, this is May 7th, 2011. This is just after he got bounced out of the American Conservative Union, though he remains getting a consulting payment, which is another thing that we need to understand better. And if we look, you're the handwriting and image expert. When I look at this, okay, I see a signature which has three main elements. It has his first name, David, his middle initial A, and his final name, Keene, right? And I look at that K. My middle name begins with a K, and I have never contemplated signing my middle initial that way. I mean, it looks like a Japanese figure.
Very flamboyant for an adult man.
Right. This is somebody at this point in 11, he is 66 years old approximately. He's been signing his name for, let's call it, for 50 years.
You're pretty much in this.
Right. This is the way you do it at that age. You kind of robo-sign it. And it's interesting to me how this end of the D, right, hooks into the capital D, right? This is really, some thought went into this. He's probably practiced this a bunch of different times. So that I would guess is his signature.
Well,
as a guess. Okay, it's a letter from him on NRA, which was a reputable organization until recently. He's the president of that organization. He was the chairman of the American Conservative Union and of the foundation for a time.
Who's he writing to here?
Senator something. It could be a local senator in Pennsylvania.
And see, the reason why I think we have good cause to presume this is legitimate is that there's really no reason why he would fake a signature on this letter.
Right. So then we look at, let's look at the one.
Well, I've taken him out already, and I've pulled the signature of David Keene from the 990 that they filed in, was it 2001?
2001. And we can, viewers could go onto the ProPublica Nonprofit Explorer and punch in American Conservative Union and punch in American Conservative Union Foundation. And you can see many, many examples like this one where the signature appears as you see it above. And why don't you tell us, Jason, the differences you see between...
It just looks substantially different. The shape of the D is totally different. The flourish, totally different.
There's no dotted I.
No dotted I. It just looks totally different. The way he's writing David is totally different than this signature on the 990, and the K is distinctively different.
And the Ean is different.
The whole thing is just totally different. I'm certainly not a handwriting expert, but I think you'd need to be blind to not recognize that this was quite clearly written by two different people.
Right. And if you're... Now, he was still married to her at that point, I think. I think they got divorced in 2003. I may have that wrong. And at this moment in time, David M. Keene, one of his children, was starting to wrestle with going to federal prison. So this was a stressful moment in the Keene family, what remained of the Keene family. But nonetheless, it doesn't say here, if you have a stressful moment, please
feel
disregard
free to forge.
anybody's signature here. So...
but wait, there's a third element, Charles.
What's that?
This is Diana Hubbard Carr's signature from a plea agreement that she entered into in 2011. And I just feel that although it also looks different, it looks like this David Keene signature could have been written by Hubbard Carr.
Well, especially, I don't know if you can do this, but her signature is on an angle, the whole thing. This is straight up. It's even tilting back a little. It's almost as if the person who normally writes on an angle says, well, I've got to make sure it looks slightly different, and I'm going to...
Let me try that for a second here. It's amazing how frequently that's becoming a problem on today's broadcast. But what we're going to be able to do right now, Charles, very briefly, is actually get into Photoshop and get into some...
Easier to turn Hubbard Carr's upright or to move David Keene's slanted? I don't know.
Here's what we're going to do. So many weird things going on with our sound here. It's just making me nuts. Okay, so we're going to take this thing, And let's try to...
The magic. Look at that.
It's certainly getting way closer in look. And then we can also...
Yeah, that's definitely what she did. That is definitely...
Oh, wow. Look at how close that is, Charles.
Yeah. That is definitely what she did. And so, again, if you're happily married and you make the mistake of putting your wife in as the person who's going to get all the papers right for a public charity, there's no tension there, right? If you're happily married, then the wife can't testify against the husband and vice versa. And you're clearly not broadly representative of the public. If you say, well, what I'm going to do in this public charity, like the Clintons, is the only people who can make any significant decisions about this public charity are the husband, the wife, or the only child. And you then try to say in the Clinton Foundation, that's a public charity, of course, because the Clintons are broadly representative of the American public. It's ridiculous. Similarly, this is for the American Conservative Union Foundation. It's a public charity, right? And this is why you don't put a family member in both roles. You don't have David as the chairman and his ex-wife or wife at the time signing the paperwork. And we have multiple examples, and indeed we're going to go through this on another charity in a second. We have multiple examples of her signature, of David Keene's signature on state filings, in particular in Massachusetts, in California, in North Carolina, in New York, in Oklahoma, in New Mexico, Colorado. There are many, many filings that you could just pull up for yourself and see what I'm talking about. So,
real quick, Charles, a lot of our commenters feel that this could be a third person doing the signing. That's certainly possible.
That could be.
I would encourage people to look at the structure of the K in this one that we suspect is forged, and the structure of the H here looks real similar to me. The D's look similar. And again, this is somebody signing their own signature. This is, we're alleging somebody forging, so it's not going to necessarily exactly match anything.
I think there's an example people will see for themselves. There are other examples. We've spent a fair amount of time just on this narrow cleanup point. Whoever may have signed it, it wasn't David A. Keene who signed that, and that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a serious problem. And it might explain why the powers that be said, we'll just say that all this mess occurred in 2006 to 2009, and let's not open that door of what was going on prior to 2006. That's a very important door to open up.
Well, 2007, they have still not filed. So therefore, anything after 2007, no matter what anybody from the American Conservative Union comes on this show and says, is out.
Well, and for another day, I'll just tease it now that I have, I think, figured out the workaround that they tried. So their approach was, when they realized the thing was a complete mess, and when they realized there was a chance they could stand accused of bank fraud for arranging mortgages on buildings in 2001 for the American Conservative Union and the American Conservative Union Foundation, if you don't have a lawful entity called the American Conservative Union Foundation, because you don't have any bylaws and you don't have any proof, legitimate proof, that the thing is a charity, rather risky to fill out a bank loan application to apply for a 15-year mortgage and get that mortgage, and then enter into legal agreements, in theory, with the American Conservative Union, where you're going to back and forth guarantee each other's mortgage. That's kind of the territory that the Clintons were treading in with Madison Guarantee and with Whitewater.
Is it interesting that Imran Awan was involved in bank fraud and ultimately?
It's a standard, this is a standard area where if you're politically connected and you're sure that no one's ever going to prosecute you,
go get a loan.
Go get a loan and don't pay it off. Get a loan, money. Buy the property, don't pay the mortgage, and don't be foreclosed, but find some dumb schmuck over here to overpay for it. You buy it for $500,000 with a loan that you get for $600,000, so you put $100,000 in your pocket. You don't have to pay the mortgage interest and principal, and some Saudi Arabian sheikh comes along and buys something that's worth $500,000 or $600,000 for $6 million. And you just say it's a real estate game.
But do they do that, or that's how they're paying people off?
I'm just saying that's a standard practice in mortgage fraud.
Wow.
And it's a standard way through all these rules. So we now need to turn to, let's quickly just, here in the nonprofit, do we want to jump? Well, why don't we, let's punch in American Conservative Union Foundation, just to show people. We're in the business of teaching people how to fish here, not in serving a fish fry. And so if you punch in this for yourself and you hit on American Conservative Union Foundation on the blue link, you get to a landing page and you can see 2009, just a second, Jason, stay on 2009.
19.
Right. The 2020 990 is long overdue.
Yeah.
Right. We're in May of 2021. The 2020 March 990 should have been finished by February.
The TV people are still up to 2018.
That's right. So, but if you go down to, go down to an instance where there's more than one green dot.
Green dot?
Green, 990 thing.
Oh.
Here, 13. Here you start seeing there's two versions of the 13.
Why is that?
Because they file an initial and then they try to correct it. And then in 2012, there's two. 2011, there's 1, 10, 9, 8, 7. We're 7.
0.
You see 7? Okay. So if we go back to 2013 and we hit the first one and we look at Schedule A, which we've talked about the instructions earlier, they're more or less the same.
Let me just bring this up so that we can manipulate it with precision. Sure. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so we go to Schedule A.
Where's that going to be?
It's going to be 10 pages in or so. Yep. That's J.
That's J. Is it before that, or is that a order?
Yeah, there it is. There it is. Okay. So this page here. Okay, at the top of the page. Okay, support schedule for organizations described in Section 509A2, right? This is not a 509A2 entity. This is should be a 509A1, okay? Mm-hmm. And you'll see that to make this mistake, you can't. It's not a casual mistake. You've had to fill in all these different lines. You notice gross receipts from admission, merchandise sold or services performed or facilities furnished in any activity that is related to the organization's tax-exempt purpose. You'll see here that they have an entry 2011, $2 million. Okay? So this is where they claim, I think, the American Conservative Union Foundation co-sponsored CPAC, and at CPAC, $2 million of revenue occurred. But nothing happened in 9, nothing happened. 0 they put in a different type font.
It's a big one, yeah.
A big 0. This is a big fucking
Totally nothing
0.
happened.
Nothing happened.
Definitely nothing happened.
Don't look over here. This is when Diana Carr Harbour was stealing money.
That's so funny.
Don't ask me about that. Right? So they give you the total supposed public support, and then you have to go through the calculation of the total that you earned in the year, total support. So you see 2009 is this, total's there. 2010 is this, total's there, right? They give you they do the math for you. Now, and then they do a calculation, and this calculation is all wrong. Oh. They're claiming that 96% came from the public, but the point is this isn't a 509A2 organization. The determination letter clearly states, the fake determination letter and the other verbiage clearly states that this is a 509A1 publicly supported organization. If you go, I think, to the next page of the schedule, you'll see that previous page, I guess. Let's keep going. Well, this is part 1, reason for public charity status. You could click 5 and you hit part 2, or you click 9 and you complete part 3. So is there a part 2 here? Let's look. Part 2. No, we go right to part 3.
So they've eliminated it.
Well, they've
checked the wrong thing.
They made sure that you didn't look at the page where you're supposed to do it. So somebody took a certain amount of attention and said, "Look, part 2, let's take that out of here." All right, so this is the way they originally do it. And if we go to the first page here, we'll see that they filed this 2013 990 in the very first page of the 990. Again, unlike the Clinton Foundation, they show these IRS stamps. November 21st, 2014, this first thing comes in. Now, this is important because by 2014, people are really starting to make noises about the Clinton Foundation. They're starting to say, what the hell's going on?
Why did it sit there for a month, though?
In the IRS, probably. Oh, no, ProPublica, I don't know why they would have.
That's scanned. That's the IRS who says that, isn't it?
I guess. I don't know. Maybe
Usually it's the next day.
There's who knows? Lois Lerner was at one point involved with this thing. So this is the original one, basically entirely wrong. Okay? You see here, T. Raymond Conlon, emphasis on C-O-N, is the accounting firm. The firm's EIN is not listed, right? You're supposed to put that in. They do put his tax preparer number. And for, as my kids say, for shits and giggles, let's see what they paid the Conlon firm to do this masterpiece of work here. It's going to be in the expense section. They might have paid a decent amount of money. We'll see. And wait, who was the chairman of the firm then? Carly Fiorina.
What?
Does she?
HP, and she gave a bunch of servers to the NSA when they wanted to spy on everybody.
Right, it wasn't, but
Michael Hayden.
Did she run for president?
That was unbelievable to me.
Right.
She should run for president of the PTA, and she'd lose that too.
Right.
Here's David Keene.
He's still on the board.
Treasurer.
You know, having screwed the organization up, he's still on the board. But if we go down, you'll see there's a revenue page and there's an expense page. In the revenue page, you'll notice they don't seem to say that there's any. In 2013, there's no CPAC revenue.
Well, who's redacting this stuff?
I don't know. But if we go to this page, right, expenses, I think, are accounting. $4,000. Let's spend $4,000 on this. Make sure we get it right.
It's not a lot, really.
You know, it's absurd.
I mean, what should this type of thing cost?
And how much, let's make sure a lawyer looks at this.
Where's the legal fees?
Not.
Oh.
Again, you get into the territory here of, in my mind, of whether the board of directors at this stage is reckless.
I bet you, Charles, if I made some sort of parody YouTube video, they'd suddenly have hundreds of thousands of dollars for legal fees.
Right. I'll put my best man on it.
Wonder where that all comes from.
Yeah, and there's a section in this, we don't need to find it at the moment, but there's a line where it says, did you get any, I think it's part 6. They talk in, it might be question 12 or 14, or policies,
Did you have a written conflict of interest policy? Yes, and we followed it to the T.
Conflict, everything.
Gave it to every employee.
No, there's a question: did the organization receive goods or services at less than fair market value? And I think I checked her. I haven't looked at it recently, but I think here we go. Just keep going. Anyway, I can't find it right now, but
they're all marked no anyway, so
right.
They're probably lying.
Right. So they didn't really, in this particular 990, decide that they wanted to do a very professional job. They didn't know the name of the organization, the type of organization it was. They didn't get the math right. So they decided they'd correct it. Let's look at the amended version. If we go back to the index, the second doohickey, this one.
Oh, yeah, this one.
This is the second version. Now, this is filed March 27th, 2015. Now, why is that important? The world does not revolve around me, but I did happen to write this thing with so many red flags. Why is the IRS not auditing the Clinton Foundation? And that was published, I want to say, March 16th, 2015. So that began to get a fair amount of focus.
So now, wait a minute. So this thing is filed when?
March 27th, 2015. So 11
Wow.
days after my article.
Oh, and they're definitely reading Breitbart.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so they attempt to correct this piece of drivel. And let's start in the, we go down to, let's look at the expenses. Let's see if they paid their accountants extra or hired lawyers to help them on this. Did they change? Was it more than 4,060 in the accounting expenses? Keep going.
I just wanted to see where David Keene is in the roster here.
9.
Still the treasurer.
A director, I think.
It said director/treasurer, didn't it?
Treasurer? Are you kidding me?
I thought that's what I saw.
No.
Look.
Van Hip. That's Van Hip.
Director is Van Hip. Director, treasurer is
No.
David Keene.
He's down here. It's the name and then the title.
Okay.
You got it, yeah.
Got it. Sorry.
It's okay. And you got Manuel Noriega's relative on there. I'm making that up. It's a common name, Noriega. But I keep going down here. Here's the revenue. So now let's look at the expense side. Last time we spent no money on legal expenses. So how much, Jason, did we spend this time in the amended version? We spent an extra...
Twice as much.
We spent nothing on legal.
100 times more, Charles.
But we spent a billion times more. But we spent an extra
Almost
3,525.
Yeah,
So an accountant, whoever the accountant is, said, let's really do a good job. Let's make sure that we fill this form out properly. Let's go to Schedule A, Jason, and see if they filled it out properly.
But also, isn't that a large increase for doing essentially the same thing for the accountant? Why did it go up so much?
Again, I don't know the rates, and maybe D.C., Maryland rates are much lower than New York rates. But, an accountant, if you're not making...
It's kind of the same every year, isn't it?
Well, if you're not making $100 an hour, charging a client $100 an hour, you're probably not making that much money as a firm, and it's maybe well be more than that. To fill this out, I mean, what we see here are what they chose to file. Okay, there are other schedules that they said, well, those are going to get you really angry, so we're not going to file them.
Yeah.
Right? Here's Schedule A. They've now switched, and they said, where before we said we were an organization, we ticked 9, we said we were Section 509A2. Now we're going to tell you that we're 170B1A6, which is a 509A1.
But they
these are very different.
Change anything officially?
Well, these are very different types of organizations, and so why did you suddenly decide you were different? And if you were different in 2013, when did the difference start? Did it start with the forged determination letter that you began to circulate in 2009 and 10, where you said with this IBM ancient type font and handwriting that you were 170B1A6 509A1? Is that when it started?
Could you repeat the question?
And if so, why are you only correcting 2013? When I bitched and moaned about the Clinton Foundation starting in 2015 and ever since, I said, listen, it's not enough to just correct 1 year. You've got to go back to the very beginning. You didn't file a 990 for the partial year 1997. That means every subsequent year is wrong. So you've got to go back to base principles, forget the statute of limitations issue. You've got to go back and prove to me that you are a lawfully organized and operated organization, and you can't do that. Well, let's go back to that schedule, if you don't mind.
I just wanted to share with you, I don't know if I told you, when I initially called Matt Schlapp to raise the notion of having an interview with him to discuss some of these questions, he's very adept at moving off of subjects he doesn't want to talk about. Because he was like, are you conservative? And I said, I voted for Donald Trump, and I don't appreciate people who are trying to make this into a socialist country. He's like, well, we should be friends and allies.
It's like, hell of a tipper, the Dalai Lama.
Hey, Lama, put a little something for the effort.
Yeah. So if you go to the next page, remember before we said they filled out part 3. There's part 2. Now let's look and see if there's a part 3 that's empty. Or did they do the same trick and say, nah, we're not going to file part 3, right? So let's go up to part 2. Now, with an accountant, Jason, what do you think is the most important part of the word accountant?
Accounting for everything?
Count.
You
ideally want an accountant who can count. Because if you don't have an accountant who can count, then chances are your forms are going to be all screwed up. So what is one of the first things you learn in math, that racist construct that we've all been forced to use to live every day? what's one of the first things you learn?
If there's people who can't do it, then everybody must be dumb and eliminate math completely.
That's right. 2 + 2 = 4, right?
Yes.
You take one thing, and if you're in base 10, we could debate if you're going to use base 9 or something else, but base 10 is an accepted form of math that humans use, we use. So you go down a page like this, and you say, all right, let's stop here. Okay. You look at this line 7. It says amounts from line 4. Okay, that's totals. You put that in, right? Then it says gross income from interest, dividends, payments. You put that in, right? Then it says net income from unrelated business activities, apparently nothing. Other income, okay? Now we still don't know what this 2 million is in 11. And then you see this line 11, total support, and it says in English, for people who are not good with numbers, add lines 7 through 10. 7, 8, 9, 10.
It's because 7 million.
Do you see any total support line for 2009? Or how about 10? Or 11? This line is all right.
It's got
So
that
what
good
did you
old
pay the
zero.
schmuck accounting firm 3,000 extra? It can't even fill in a total, right?
Huh.
You know, this is the kind of stuff. I mean, when you get with the training that I had, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, no one's perfect, but the training that I had, fortunately at a young age, 24, 11 long years at Dillon Reed, I mean, you wouldn't even dream of submitting this document to the IRS. I mean, first of all, you're supposed to fill out every one of these things. If there's 0, you're supposed to put a 0 in there.
But anybody signing this should be personally fearful of false stuff.
Right. And so you on purpose, you manipulated the form. Even the freaking Clinton Foundation, and with regard to its Schedule A, does not go so far as to manipulate the forms. And even the freaking Clinton Foundation did try to amend. They realized they had it in 1 year, 2013. They realized by 2015, Jesus, we've been telling everybody we're a 509A2. We better correct that for 13. Even the Clinton Foundation said, well, actually, we better do it for the preceding years too. But they didn't want to go back into 2009, because if you go back into 2009 at the Clinton Foundation, that's where all hell breaks loose, because nothing adds up, right? Mm-hmm. So again, the reason I'm drilling these people new orifices is that I expect the Clintons and the people who would support the Clintons to be crooked. I do not expect something called the American Conservative Union Foundation to be this bad at filling out essential documents. Because after all, if I'm a donor, if I'm an individual donor in 2013, it matters a lot to me whether you're a 509A1 or a 509A2, because I can deduct a different percentage of my gross income if it's an A1 than if it's a lower, if it's A2. So it matters to me, right? And this is the kind of thing serious donors would check if they were serious about this, if this were not an influence peddling exercise, which I sadly expect it has been for a long time, right? If the real game here is, look, as you found on the Matt Schlapp call, hey, are you going to support this thing, and maybe we'll give you a chance to run for president and so you can give us more money in our political consulting firms, or are you going to be a pain in the ass?
I chose my
pain in the ass.
Yeah.
That's me. I mean, how many videos?
You don't get money from Matt Schlapp for that.
Right. How many videos do you need to check to establish that both you and I could be very difficult if we want to be? Anyway, so this is just one example. You know, David, Matt, I bet both of you are not particularly good with numbers. You're obviously not good supervising forums. And by the way, Matt, you were on the board of this, I think, at least the American Conservative Union in 2013. And in 2013, this is not for today to do it. We'll do it in another setting. It turned out they amended their bylaws, or thought they had, February 10th, 2006, to give ironclad control to current and former members of the American Conservative Union in this foundation. Something it's very risky to do, because this is supposed to be a public charity, broadly representative of the public at large. It's not supposed to be under the thumb of the chairman of the American Conservative Union and other board members of the American Conservative Union, who, by the way, are being paid by the foundation. The ACU is being paid for services rendered, and there's no explanation anywhere of exactly what services they're getting. And by the way, when you check this American Conservative Union Foundation, it's kind of tough to argue that something is an independent organization when it has no employees.
Well, I thought they're just hiring all their kids.
I'm just saying, but it's like, you don't pass the smell test of, is this truly and it would be so easy. I mean, there's so many college kids who were interested in, believe
Graft.
it or not, in real college, people are conservative. There are, in fact, across this country, many young people who are interested in politics who would love nothing better than to be running around doing the scut work at one of these places.
In DC for something.
And to get the opportunity of a paid internship after college to work in this thing and make everything. If you wanted to do it correctly, it wouldn't be tough. And there are plenty of millionaires and billionaires out there who would happily give money for a seriously constructed conservative organization to carry on the conservative principles, which many of these very rich people do continue to like. So to see the state of these filings still uncorrected, to see the arrogance of the people running this place into the ground, and to see us now in a position where we have, if you want to be President of the United States and a Republican, you've got to get endorsed by the American Conservative Union, or you're not going to get across the line.
Yep. So
now let's turn our attention. We did promise we'd talk about EcoHealth. If you hit support, the green button that you nearly were on at the top, support.
Here?
Yeah. I just tried, this guy, Robert Kessler, must be really, really busy because I tried that number moments ago and I was told he's on another line on the Sunday before Memorial Day, very busily working on,
he's talking to the scheduler for Matt Schlapp.
Exactly.
They can't come to the phone.
Exactly. But what I called another general number for EcoHealth, I got a recording a while back that said, hi, you've reached the offices of EcoHealth due to the COVID pandemic. And it doesn't say this, which we created. Our offices are closed. If you want to reach us, do this or that or some other thing.
So this is this dude, Peter Daszak, who's going around to the wet markets and tasting all the bad soup to figure out what happened.
Right. In the question of EcoHealth Alliance, EcoHealth, I'm sad to report, is cut from exactly the same cloth as the Clinton Foundation, exactly the same cloth as the American Conservative Union Foundation. Here we have Nance Yee Green, the chair. And this guy, you're talking about Peter Daszak.
Isn't this the guy who was an Olympic swimmer?
I don't think so. On
Wheaties?
We have, I think, a few McKinsey people. This is making sense. Who is this Kimberly Spina?
There's no link.
All right. So what we will do is go back to the New York, if we go to the New York Charity Bureau search. You had it, next one over. Yeah, let's punch in EcoHealth Alliance. 2 L's.
See, that's what I was guessing at, and I guessed wrong. Okay, sorry.
And it's E, a capital E, and, well.
EcoHealth Alliance.
There you go. All right. So, okay. Now, this shows registration documents in 2011. It shows an IRS determination letter in 2011. It shows annual filings. Okay? Let's hit the IRS determination letter. Let's see what we find. Okay, this is actually what I believe is called an affirmation letter. That's when you write into the IRS and say, you wouldn't exactly say it this way, I'm a dumb fuck and I don't know whether I'm tax exempt. Can you please remind me whether I'm tax exempt?
This actually looks like letters that I've gotten from the IRS in terms of how it's typed. It doesn't look forged immediately.
Right, but this is, they asked for some account management person is giving you evidence that they, the IRS, as of this date, believe that you are a 509A1, 170B1A6, but this is an affirmation letter. This is not a determination letter. The determination letter is the letter that is originally sent out, okay?
And then this affirms it.
Right, but this is called EcoHealth Alliance, Inc.
Right.
Now, I want to give a huge shout out. I'm wailing on Arkansas, but I want to give a huge shout out to the good folks in North Carolina, even though you've got a Democratic governor, I think, and you're leaning blue. The NC Charity, Secretary of State Charities Bureau is really out freaking standing what they do. Let's go into that, and let's punch in EcoHealth Alliance. And again, we're in the business of teaching people how to fish here. This is stuff, if you're like me and you don't have much to do, you can have a lot of fun going into this. So hit EcoHealth Alliance, then go to the bottom of the page, and you'll see it says Document Filings. Go to the first one. It says Initial Charity. This is the first time, right? This is 2004 before 2011?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Good. So go down to the bottom of this page. You'll see Federal Tax Determination Letter. Let's hit that. This was sent out on the 21st of September, 2004. Does that look like the letter you just saw?
Well, not really.
Okay. Notice who it's addressed to.
Wildlife Trust, Inc.
All right. And notice that that's on October 18th, 2004. Okay?
Yeah.
So what would be extremely relevant here?
What is Wildlife Trust, Inc.?
Well, that's the point. So we've seen this before. You've got a charity, in theory, a CHINO, a charity in name only, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, supposed to put up a real archive in Little Rock. And then they say, yeah, that's kind of freaking boring. I mean, the librarians can only give us so much money for this thing. Let's fight AIDS.
Demon statues there.
Yeah, let's do climate change. Let's have a grifter conference in New York. This is not sexy enough. A wildlife trust, we need to change our name. So it's very, very relevant to see what the Wildlife Trust said they were going to do to get this letter back on October 18th, 2004.
Let me guess. Homebrew recipes for bad soup.
No.
Oh.
So if you go back one arrow, however you do that,
to
you
this?
can do it, yeah. All right, now let's look at the articles, which is the the bottom one. This tells you, in theory, what you're supposed to do, what you said you were going to do. This would have been provided to the IRS, the articles. Now, Jason, you're going to probably believe that I know.
Wait. Why is this Massachusetts if we're looking at North Carolina?
Well, because they're filing to fundraise in North Carolina. So this is, when you have an organization that's seeking to raise money around the U.S., you've got to go to all the jurisdictions and make sure that you've filed properly. So they say the exact name of the corporation is Wildlife Trust, Inc. Then Article 2, the purpose of the corporation is to engage in the following activities. Now, typically, if you want to be tax, just stay there for a second. If you want to be tax exempt, the right way to do this is at the very beginning is to say something along the lines of, this corporation is organized to qualify as a tax exempt corporation type whatever, and its purposes are, boom. So it's organized for the purpose of conserving threatened wild species. Now you could say that means humans, but you'd be wrong. Humans are not a threatened wild species.
Not
right?
wild.
They're not threatened, and they're not wild.
Depends who you talk to.
Okay. And their habitats, in partnership with local scientists and environmentalists around the world. Okay. I don't see anything in there about human health, coronavirus, medical doctors, epidemiologists, garden gnomes, any of that.
But
right?
I thought because of the wildlife aspect, that's why he was at the wet market.
Again, let's just go through this part. You're supposed to, on the basis of an organizational, that's a hopeful.
I'm projecting.
I know I haven't done my homework, but
yeah.
No. So it then says this is the purpose is up here, and in furtherance thereof, this lists out the activities that further the purpose. So it's clear from the articles, and it's clear from doing what is called an organizational test. The IRS normally says, I don't give a shit about your bylaws. I don't give a shit about your application. I want to see in the articles of incorporation alone, nothing else, no resume, no brochure, no nice letter, no political contribution. All I want to look at is the articles and make sure that the articles describe an entity that is validly going to become tax exempt if I, the IRS, grant you exemption. So to further these things, you can promote research in the natural sciences, zoology, its allies, with a view to the preservation and conservation of those species in danger of extinction in the wild state. So wet market research not covered under that.
Because they're already dead.
Right.
When they're there.
Right. Promote research and study of species life and behavior. This is again meaning those species in danger of extinction, not all species including human. Life and behavior with a view to the conservation and preservation of those species which are or liable to become in danger of extinction in the wild state. That's not dealing with humans, right?
Or the wet market.
Right. Develop programs for the conservation and preservation of species in any part of the world. Now, maybe you could say under C that means human, but I don't think so. And D, to do all other things convenient or proper to the conduct, promotion, operation, and attainment of the purposes herein specified, or which at any time may be incidental to such purposes. Now, maybe there you say this is incidental to those purposes. All is set forth in these articles of organization. So I see nothing so far that would allow me to do coronavirus investigation involving
Wuhan.
Humans, right, and gain-of-function research. None of that would seem to be in this, as far as I can tell. And by the way, this is for something called the Wildlife Trust.
Which is not even the thing that he's part of.
All right, now keep on. So then was there an Article 3? Let's see, there's Article...
Cut off there.
I see Article 2.
Jammed in his
And
scanner.
I don't see Article 3. But I see Article 4. See Attachment A, Article 4. We'll get to that. I see Article 5.
It's different.
I see Article 6.
Font.
Okay, now notice here, Victoria B. Mars. Now, I should hasten to point out that in my class at Yale, there were 1,300 people in my class, roughly speaking. Very few of them were billionaires.
Is this Mars candy?
Yes, it is. And so it is highly likely, here she is, the clerk, whatever that title means, and she's one of 3 directors, right?
Huh.
And if you Google her, she's
M&M Mars.
very wealthy. And actually, I remember her. She went from Yale to Wharton Business School, and she tried to get a job at Dillon Reed. And she was actually a very nice person back then, and she was trying to join the conversation with a bunch of other people, and was talking about the subject of skiing came up because a lot of people at Dillon Reed like to ski, and she made some comment about, I don't have 2 pairs of skis at home, because my grandfather would never let me take skis on the jet to our home in Austria. He made me keep my skis at all. Yeah.
How did she survive that?
Well, she didn't get the job offer. She's actually a nice...
I mean the lugging those skis to Austria had to be terrible.
But no, she's a nice person and probably well-meaning. And I noticed that in all this stuff talking about her, it doesn't seem to mention any work on this EcoHealth thing.
She's down with the Charles Darwin Foundation.
Right. That's to get rid of humans.
Is it? Eugenics?
I'm making that up. But you see, it doesn't mention anything about... Now, Wikipedia is far from perfect. Now, here's that David Spina. 2 from her first marriage and 2 from her current marriage with David Spina.
Who is he?
Well, when you were looking at the senior people up here, I thought I saw Lisa Spina as a name in the directory up there. If you go back... No, to the directory. In the directory, if you go page back, you had...
This one? Yeah, I don't know.
No, you stay in there. No, this one, but page back. Yeah, board of directors. Spina, Kimberly Spina.
Kimberly Spina.
That's not a common name. That's probably one of her children.
Wow.
So, anyway, so we're looking at this EcoHealth, and we're discovering that if we go back into the Articles of Incorporation, we're discovering that it does not appear to have what is called notwithstanding language. That was right. You had the right one. Next to left.
This one?
Yeah. So keep going down here. I don't see any notwithstanding language. I see it signed the 19th day of July 2000, but I don't see the language that would say...
Notwithstanding language?
Notwithstanding anything else in here, this corporation is formed for the purpose of being a 170B1A6 5098. I don't see any of that in here. I may be missing it. And I do see that the documents were drawn up by, keep going down at the bottom,
BK.
a firm, no, we'll get to that. We'll get to, it's not signed, I noticed, by the secretary, Hale and Dorr.
Who are they?
Wilmer Hale.
Oh, wow.
And this is, if Victoria's lawyers were looking at this, or whatever her name is, Virginia, Victoria, whatever her name is, the Mars lady, if she hired, Hale and Dorr was a fantastic firm. And I forget if Robert Mueller eventually was Wilmer.
Yeah.
But this is like saying, Cravath or Davis Polk. It's one of the top firms then in Boston. And I say that this is a bullshit, sloppy job, that if they wanted this to be something that could do gain-of-function research, they would have put that in the articles, and if they wanted this to validly be tax exempt, they would have made sure that they had that language here. They wouldn't have all these different type fonts. They would have had an actual well-typed and well-thought-through document. So that's not what we have here. This is what they hold out as being the Articles of Incorporation for this EcoHealth, which is actually Wildlife Trust. So go back into the North Carolina index. Yeah.
Let me real quick just get the audio out before it becomes a problem. It's interesting, Charles, that all of the things we look at seem to have similar issues of not doing anything that they're supposed to do.
Right. So if we go back into the index for this North Carolina thing, all right, that's the first one. Oh, you go to initial charity extension, renewal charity, and notice that there's correspondence on July 12th, 2005. Let's see what that correspondence says. Is it going to be good news, Jason?
Seems like it's big if it's taking that long to download.
You think it's going to be good? Oh, no, this is just correspondence from them saying, hey, we moved.
It's like, hey, we're having a great time. Wish you were here.
Yeah, all right.
Postcard from the IRS.
Right, so there's one correspondence. Let's go back. And we get extension, renewal, charity. And then we get another correspondence in 2008. Let's see what that says.
Denial?
Yeah, the river.
Yeah, it's a river, right.
Dear Ms. Catherine, this person is such a small organization. They have my name is Catherine. Madonna taught me well.
That's
You
crazy.
can reach me at Wildlife Trust, Inc.
Wait, they're right over here on 17th Street.
We walked by this.
Did we?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. Wildlife Trust. What was it? What did it look
Well,
like?
that's EcoHealth. It's the same place.
Oh, right.
Remember we walked over to
Right,
34th Street?
Right.
And I said you were a great straight man when we got to 3rd Avenue at 655 3rd. We'll get to. Okay, so your extension request was denied. Now, this is paperwork and it's somewhat trivial, but it was denied. Let's go back into the list and back another page. And you see there's more correspondence, but look at the very end. Where do we end up with all this, all the different places?
Just the second page.
Yeah, second page. Let's look at the second page. Whoa, we're back in
Still
Egypt.
denied.
We're back in Egypt. This is April 5th, 2021.
Oh, wow. This is pretty new stuff.
Insufficiently see letter. Just, okay. You didn't file a financial report, need 2020 ending financials, right? So the great state of North Carolina has people in it who
actually
take
read
this
these.
shit seriously.
Yeah.
And they have disciplined the American Conservative Union Foundation and Union. They know what they're doing. And if anybody should be giving lectures to anybody about how to run state-level policing organizations of charities, I'd start with North Carolina. They're doing a good job. Contrast that with California and New York, they're doing a shit job.
They're not paying attention.
Yeah. So let's look at New York since you brought it up.
Yeah.
All right. And did we search for American Conservative Union in here? EcoHealth? Yeah, there's EcoHealth.
Yeah, this is it.
Okay. Now, for the hell of it, as Dr. Fauci might say, let's pull up the 2012, June 30th, 2012 annual filing. Okay. Now, this is a CHAR 500 form, okay? And there's your man, Peter Daszak. They're now calling this thing EcoHealth Alliance at the same address. You go down the page.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right? And we get to, keep going, government grants. And here, okay? Refer to attached schedule of expenditures of federal awards, okay? $5,830,000, okay? It's a hell of a lot to go to an organization that doesn't appear to have articles, doesn't appear to have determination letter. We don't have the tax exempt application form. Maybe it was part of an earlier organization that got tax exemption in 1970 called the Wildlife Preservation International Trust. But nonetheless, we should be having some details about it. So do you think there's a breakdown in here?
Well, can you imagine any nearly $6 million transaction not having several lawyers involved in it?
Oh, there's some details we're going to see in a second. So go right to the back page. Of course, when you've got really damaging stuff, what you do is you put it in a filing all the way at the back. Actually, stop there for a second.
Whoops.
Because you had the question of how much they were spending for accounts. You've got to go up a few pages.
That was like I was in full go to the end mode.
Okay. There we go, right here. Accounting, $52,000.
Wow, that's a lot more.
Yeah, and legal, $7,000 is too light. Now, but let's go to the very end and let's see their disclosures, which are at the very end.
It's a lot of pages in this.
Yeah, it's this page right there. Okay, here's a breakdown of their grants. And it's pretty freaking specific, okay?
It's all from the NIH for 90.
Well, they really do a good job here. The direct federal funding, Department of Interior is giving them money, Department of Agriculture is giving. But here we go, look at what they have. White nose bat syndrome.
Oh.
Those bats, you really want to protect the hell out of them. Don't want them to go extinct. Wildlife avian influenza surveillance.
Well, Rand Paul was talking about how they were giving cocaine to ducks or something and seeing
National Science Foundation, they're giving viral pathogens a study. Then bat studies.
Where's the duck cocaine study?
Avian influenza in Bangalore, avian flu clustering. Here we go. The West Nile virus study.
Well, that makes sense if people are getting sick from it. Emerging
Pandemic Threat Program, USAID. Let's see how big that is. If you go to this side, $4 million. This is in 2000, the period through June 30th, 2012. So 80% approximately of the monies that came in the government grants were for an emerging pandemic threat program in 2012.
USAID is a cutout for the CIA.
Right. Well, now so with this EcoHealth revelation, the way they were all spinning from the same hymnal or whatever you want to say, sheet music. They were saying, well, actually what happened, the reason this is coming out now is that Dr. Fauci was pushing and pushing on this, and the Obama administration decided by 2014 they did not want to see this happen. So Fauci went ahead on his own, against the wishes of the Obama team, and starting in 2017, he took the inept Trump people and went to a junior level at the White House and rammed this program through. So Obama wanted to stop it. He's the savior, Saint Obama. He wanted to protect us all. But Fauci, the evil garden gnome, he's the one who couldn't stop himself from doing projects which are absurd. The statement, I'm a scientist, follow the science. I've determined that the potential benefits to my crazy activities far outstrip the risks that my crazy activities will lead to a pandemic. Because I'm a scientist. I figured that out. Yeah. That's not science. It's megalomania.
What does this mean, pass through?
So the way, this is why Fauci and others are being so lawyerly or so disingenuous and dishonest, frankly. You ask a question, did you, through your agency, give money to fund this gain-of-function research in the Wuhan? Nope, I didn't do that.
We gave it to Peter Daszak. He gave it to them.
Yeah, I gave it to USAID.
Right.
I endorsed the grant to USAID to cover their tracks. They gave it to University of California, Davis. They, in turn, gave it to EcoHealth. So, no, I didn't do it. Well, did it actually end up in, U.S. money end up in the Wuhan virology lab? No, because you can't spend dollars in China. They exchanged it for Chinese renminbi. Right. You know, I mean, it's just the kind of stuff that you would teach a young child. That yes, technically you're true, garden gnome, what you're saying is true, but as a practical matter, you're just not answering the question. You're trying to hide what is the truth because you know the truth is really going to upset me, and I'm in a position as Donald Trump to put your fucking ass in jail.
Not anymore, he's not.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how this plays out because I think this has been very bad news. So this is all the way back on you put the good news. So always put the good news on page 74 of 76 as I'm done. Because you can be sure our journalists on crack who don't like numbers anyway, they're going to read every page of a document like this. They're going to look at something like this and say, this is meaningful. No, they're not. They're going to get to like page 15 and say, I don't see anything in there.
It's got to be good.
You know, it's kind of fantastic. Fauci, give him a Nobel Prize.
Rand Paul was referencing a study of like sexual promiscuity among quail that they had given cocaine to. I mean, that was a real...
That's like, you can imagine... So you could imagine doing a sitcom where you'd say, all right, you have one group over here of serious questions of, what you'd be...
Cancer.
Asking the applicant serious questions. How many Nobel Prizes do you have? How many papers have you written? Did you ever get anything wrong on any test you've ever taken at any time in your life? Can you provide copies of all your report cards? That's that level. And the other one, it's like, who could we find who'd give cocaine to ducks?
But on a serious note, if somebody was seeking, forget about government or whatever, someone's looking for money to do that, what is the first place your mind goes to?
Insane asylum?
No, I mean, doesn't it seem like there's probably some scientist on that study who's like, yeah, we're going to study this, and you got the money or what? It's just like, what the hell are you talking about? They're trying to get cocaine into the lab and then call up Hunter Biden.
Good point. So let's go back to the search results. And now let's go patiently year by year. Let's look, for example, for the 6/30/2009 annual filing for the charitable organization. Let's just see what this is 2009. Okay, let's see what it says.
Oh.
All right, let's see. Is there a char? Okay, there's a char 500. They're calling it the Wildlife Trust. Okay? Mm-hmm. Let's keep going. Let's see if they have any government grants.
And this is very close to Barry Diller's neighborhood, too.
The Geological Survey, Georgia Department, National Institute of Health gives this thing $480,000. Oh. National Science Foundation, $73,000. University of California, $12,000. UCLA, $44,000.
This is the National Oceanographic something or other.
And then that's U.S. Department of Agriculture. But the point is, for those people who still believe that the Clinton Foundation should be celebrated for their 20 years of good work, which are actually 24 years of disastrous work, even this piece of shit, EcoHealth, Wildlife Trust, manages to try to comply with regard to this period, at least giving the names of the government grantors. So the Clinton Foundation is like, we'll give you that for some, but for the foreign, if we told you the names of the foreign governments that gave us money, you'd realize that we failed to register as a foreign agent because we got all this money from foreign governments, and you get really mad at us, and you probably yank our tax exemption, and we look really stupid, and we probably have to give the money back and pay taxes, and we wouldn't be invited to parties anymore. So we're not going to.
Obviously couldn't say that.
We're not going to do that. But so even EcoHealth goes ahead and they say, all right, this is what we're doing. Now, if you go now into the 990, in the front of it, to keep going down, the Wildlife Trust is asked in the 990, this page right here. Next page. Yeah. All right. Look at this. What is the first
Bat
thing?
populations in China. And
Wildlife Trust continues to monitor bat populations in China and other Southeast Asian nations for
because of the
SARS coronavirus,
oh wow,
the cause of the 2001 global pandemic, to prevent future spillover events.
huh?
Okay, so how does it get into that as the Wildlife Trust for the period ending June 30th, 2009?
Because also, didn't they say they were trying to save species, not figure out what's making them sick?
Or
I guess that could
or not
qualify.
Not see. I would argue that studying how something gains a function, jumps from affecting animals to affecting humans, is very different than conserving zebras in their natural habitat. We'll get to this in a second.
Well, but they're not studying how it naturally gains a function. Gain of function research is you do something to it. Like, let's take this coronavirus
and manipulate it.
Yeah, like they spoke specifically about with anthrax. They took regular anthrax, which you cannot get unless you're like rubbing a cow, and they took the individual spores and coated them with silica so that they could be like dust and float in the air rather than stick together and be heavier than air. And then when they gain that function, now you could inhale it, it goes in your lungs, and then you definitely die. What's the purpose of that other than weaponizing it?
And explain to me how that's charitable.
Well, it's not, but I mean, gain of function for viruses, every time I hear about the details of what it is that they're doing, I don't believe this explanation that they're doing this to study what might happen.
Right.
I mean, literally come back to my analogy of if I'm curious about what might happen in a car accident, I'm not going to go smash my car at 100 miles an hour with me in it to find out.
Alternatively, if you've got an administration that has a track record of doing just that, for example, the Obama administration with
Fast and Furious
sending illegal handguns down into Mexico to see how they end up and whether they end up back in the United States and what happens to you. What?
Well, Robert Stahl raises the good point that they said that the Bundy Ranch, it was an environmental thing that they were trying to save some kind of rare turtles.
Right.
Anyway, but you had an idea that you were going down.
Yeah, so we're just going to go year by year. This is for the people who say that they can't find the evidence. I'm trying to help specifically Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity.
FBI.
Forget the FBI. They're too busy. They're watching porn. But
Pano.
The real journalists who may be out there, let's go back let's look at a few more years and see what we find. Let's look at the next year, which I guess we did 9 just then. Let's do 10. And we'll look on the char form. Now they've changed their name. And here you can't just change your name from, let's say, I'm the Dumbfuck Foundation, and I'm going to assemble the dumbest people in the world, and we're going to come up with the dumbest ideas in the world. And then you change that to be, I'm the Protect Orangutan Foundation. You can't, by a name change your purposes.
You can't even just automatically change the name of a for-profit corporation without registering with the Attorney General.
Right. And in addition, if you're going to use any kind of doing business as name in New York State, which I think they might have been doing, you have to register that name, doing business as name, in each county where you want to use it. And there are a lot of counties.
For a for-profit or just for a non-profit?
For both, I think.
Huh. Yeah. Mine, I just had to register with the Attorney General and then bring that to the bank, and that was it.
Yeah, because they're assuming you're operating in Manhattan.
Right.
Okay, so let's go. This is this event. They have these galas twice a year, spring and fall gala, to raise money for this stuff. But they also take a lot of money from governments. Here we are again. Look at this. USAID, $1 million. National Institute of Health, $1.3 million.
Wow.
This is, I think, Fauci's one. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, $66,587. So if you were a serious investigative arm, you'd say, listen, gnome, okay, you have enough time to go out and be on the cover of Vanity Fair and be on the cover of this and do all these TV appearances. Get your ass into my office with an explanation of exactly what you did with that $66,000 in this time frame. I want to see the contract. I want to see any after-action report you got back from what parties. I want to see the wiring instructions. I want to see everything that you have on that grant. And while I'm at it, I then, once we figure out how much your specific entity gave, I then want to figure out allied entities. Why is so much money going to this EcoHealth Alliance that doesn't seem to have its paperwork in order and has not proven, at least to my satisfaction, that it's validly organized and operated as a public charity?
Isn't it remarkable that all of these different things could be involved and not a single one of them has done even a cursory examination of this thing?
I honestly think that the government doesn't work. I think there are a few people, the exceptions do not necessarily prove the rule here, but there are some honest people in government who really take it seriously and worry about every penny they're spending of the people's money. And then there are other people who are like, dude, did you get the message? I mean,
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. I mean, why are you here at 10:30? I mean, you're not supposed to show up till 11:30. 11:30, you use the restroom. You call your friend, you confirm your lunch appointment, come back at 3, You're
making us look bad.
Yeah, you're making us look really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go off and do other stuff, get ready to set up your new job, maybe invent some things, invest in some things, get your family involved in this venture.
Yeah, you know what? If you think about it, what Imran Awan was accused of as far as having all his family work there, getting paid but never showing up, running all these different companies that seems implausible that he possibly could have been doing. It's almost like perhaps he's very smart and he just showed up in D.C. and was like, oh, I see how it all works.
Right.
Let me get my business set up and I'm in.
The only thing missing so far is the Chinese spy. But so here's a whole bunch of government grants. And note, here's an entity that doesn't do a lot of its paperwork properly, but decides we better actually comply with the letter of the law and put in a list of all our government grants. It doesn't say put in only your big grants. It doesn't say put in only U.S. grants by U.S. government entities. But in this instance, there are quite a few. Let's see the next year. Maybe it's a fluke. Maybe it's not.
Somebody's talking about Marlon Perkins. Didn't he have a show about wildlife, something or other?
I don't know. I think you want 2011.
I think there was a Marlon Perkins wildlife show.
Again, I don't know. You could have Wild Charities, the Wild Charity Show. Do you think there are any government grants? Oh, wait. What's this? I'm going to...
What?
The fundraising firm.
Wow. It's called Checks in the Mail.
Checks in the Mail. Don't bother me, man. Checks in the mail.
Wow. That's really funny.
I wish that they decided to pay checks in the mail. 4%, look at this, royalty. 4% of net sales to charity, cause-related marketing. Doesn't say amount paid. So you're cutting these guys in. You're giving them a slice, giving them a taste. 4%.
That's really weird. Checks
in the mail. 6% to these people. Here's 6%.
What are they doing?
If you look across businesses, except services businesses and businesses where there is patent protection. Okay, wait. Patent protection. 6% off of revenues. That's very good. Okay, so this is the same thing. Referred to attached schedule of expenditures of federal awards. Where do you think that's likely to be, Jason? Maybe page 75.
Something down at the end here.
That's list of directors. What about this one? No. Nope.
It's all hidden.
Nope. I don't see it. Nope. Nope. They don't see it here. This is another technique. You say the schedule is going to be attached, but you just don't put it in.
Well, I don't know.
Let's go further up and see if before the 990 they had a schedule.
Schedule L?
No, before the 990. So, no. Oh yeah, here. This. No, it's the states. It's still in the 990. So yeah, here the strategy appears to be we'll just not show you for this period because now you're into the Obama administration. Refer to attached schedule. I don't see. Maybe it's somewhere.
It just goes to the 990.
And this is odd too. Look at this 990. It doesn't.
It just looks like it was folded when they scanned it. See here?
All right. Well, let's look at the. You want to do this to us? We're now going to look at 2012. We'll see whether it looks folded there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what we
have. A lot
have.
of clicking happening today.
Actually, let's look at 2013. And we'll see if they have the government grant thing. Yeah, there they have it. Okay, Department of the Interior, Department of Defense all of a sudden.
Whoa.
And U.S. Agency for International Development, $4.5 million.
Yeah, that's USAID, CIA, DOD. I mean...
And here, honestly, when we think about the Chinese response to what people are now saying, Tucker and others are saying now, and people said earlier, the Chinese have doubled down, and they have said, listen, you're accusing us of something that's just wrong. This virus came from Fort Detrick, Maryland. That's what the Chinese are saying. And
I think they might both be right.
Exactly. But the point is, this is why you need to have the charity world policed. You can't have these gigantic loopholes where government doesn't, Joe Biden wants to go and hire, I don't know if it's 37,000 or 87,000.
87,000 IRS agents.
And let's not enforce the laws that are on the books. Let's let the Gates Foundation.
How many 9-year-old girls is he going to hire?
Right, exactly. Well, there'll be an extensive interviewing process. But, and look at this. This is an interesting department of the Interior. The Department of the Interior.
Where is that?
The Department.
Man.
This is what you see
Very
across.
carefully put together here.
This is the kind of thing where you generally, my first real job in high school actually was to be a proofreader. And this is one where you should see this immediately because you've got department properly spelled and improperly spelled, and the words are different length.
Exactly. And what I was going to say is you and I have different approaches to doing this stuff, which is why, I blast out things on the keyboard and then go over it. I try to be careful with spelling check. And this has not been done here at all.
I think they turn off the spelling check. Turn off the fraud detector, the spell check, whatever. Math, get rid of that.
No mistakes.
That's
in
racist.
This document. Yeah.
All right. So here you have how many? Another, what is this, $7 million at the bottom? Yeah. $7 million of our taxpayer money sent to the EcoHealth rat hole into oblivion. Let's look at the next year. We're now into 14 when supposedly the wise and all-knowing Saint Obama decided, nah, can't do this anymore. Let's see if it stopped.
I bet $1 it didn't.
$1, Jason, for you. Yeah, there we go. Let's see, do they have any typos here? No, but USAID, $5.3 million.
But this is just the CIA funneling money to this damn thing every year.
And keep going. And who is this Peter Daszak? There's $7.6 million.
Who is he?
Exactly. I don't know. He speaks
British,
with
I
an
think.
English accent. Exactly. It's very suspicious. So let's go. Let's do this painstakingly. Let's look at the next year. Let's see if it stopped in 15. Remember, the whole thing is all omniscient Obama, 00. He stopped this because he's got our best interests at heart. You can be sure of that.
I don't think so.
What does this show? Department of Defense, $2.4 million. AID, $5 million.
Wow.
National Science Foundation is, but why? What is going on here? We know the USAID is a scandalous operation. I mean, by its own admission, there have been numerous directors of USAID and regional directors have been forced to resign, having stolen money or diverted money. So I call bullshit on the notion that this Wuhan funding stopped under Obama and only resumed under Trump. Let's look at the next year. This is through 15. Let's look at 16.
By the way, that would be the perfect thing to do if you knew you were going to do that and wanted to make it look like Trump did something.
Right. 16.
Oh, sorry.
And notice they haven't yet done one. 16, let's see.
Isn't that it?
Yeah, but let's keep going down page. See if we have the. Here we go. Look at this,
6 million.
6.7. Now we're up to 10 million. This is in the period ending
And
June
the
30th, 16. Okay, so we're promoting the Steele dossier. We're letting Hillary Clinton off the hook for the Clinton Foundation. And under Obama, we're increasing the funding to this EcoHealth fraud, apparent fraud. And the amounts are getting bigger and bigger. And yes, it's true that narrowly Fauci's department didn't provide the money, but I don't think that USAID would send 6.7, I would hope they wouldn't send 6.7 million around the world without checking in with the domain experts in health inside our government who may have been involved in prior years with these projects.
How do they arrive at these numbers? Like, why isn't it just 100,000? Why 111? I mean, you got to get that $14.
Yeah.
What the hell is that about?
I don't know. I can't explain it. So let's keep slathering through this, and let's do the next one. Because the punchline you're really going to like. 17, let's look at that. This is when he supposedly whizzed it by Trump.
But I mean, aren't these...
Here we go again. Now it's 9 million to USAID.
Wow.
Right? Department of Defense, 2.5 million. Homeland Security joins the mix for 154. And we got
It's
now
up to 12, almost 13 million bucks.
substantially all of the revenue is coming from
How
U.S.
many
government.
people work for this thing, and where is all that money going?
About half. Half the people actually work. So now let's look at the next one.
It's the last one.
Yeah.
They're on the TV schedule for filing.
Right. And do we have, USAID is 11, Defense 2.4, National Science is,
15 mil.
yeah.
They're
Okay.
doing great.
Right, so this is for what period? This is for the period at the very beginning. It'll tell you through June 30th, 2000. This is 18, I think, through June 30th, 2000. Yeah, June 30th, 2018. Let's go back into the summary. Okay.
That's the most recent one.
That's the most recent one. Okay. So now let's go into ProPublica and put EcoHealth Alliance into ProPublica. And let's see who do you think, and don't say the word, we'll let the audience see. Who, if you had a really effed up charity that was operating, taking government money and sprinkling it around the world in projects that you didn't want anybody to really understand what the entity was doing, what accounting firm would you pick?
Well,
Let's see. Let's see, here we have an audit document for the year ending June 2020. We don't have 2019 in New York, but here we have it. Who do you pick?
well, I mean, yeah, I see it already. I have been bringing this. I was ready with that. Hey, boys.
We saw what you did with the Clinton Foundation. Could you get over here and this EcoHealth thing? You're just a
to
team.
the Mizzou game.
Yeah, you managed to basically not tell anybody that the Clinton Foundation didn't exist and was taking money, lots of money from foreign governments for projects over which it held no valid legal authority. And you got away with that for more than 10 years, and no one's ever brought you to account. So why don't you come in and do our work? I mean, you're just the team that we need. And here we have, let's see, this audit is dated March 5th, 2021.
I love it that they sign it BKD LLP like it's like
Right.
a children's clothing store or something.
Right.
Like, what the hell?
Right. Slow down for a sec there. We see, government contracts and grants are 15 million out of 18 million. All right. So why corporations would give this thing any money? Well, the answer is they only give it about $1 million in the preceding year. Oh, sorry, this is 15 million in 19 and only 7.5 million in 20 for some reason. It drops a lot. But corporations pick up some of the slack. Now, this is an example of, I think it's called a single audit, which is it's a much more comprehensive audit than the Clinton Foundation ever got from BKD for anything. But But even so, I question why anybody would use BKD as an auditing firm, given what I've seen so far. I mean, almost everything I have looked at that has BKD's name associated with it should be wearing not a cheese hat, but a slightly different kind of hat. Maybe it's brown, poop hat or something. I mean, they're just, everything reeks.
Brian McNamara says Ron Brown would be proud.
All right, so now slow for a second. EcoHealth, it says EcoHealth Alliance, Inc. and Wildlife Preservation Trust International, Inc. consolidated statements of cash flow. So
it's two things in one, Charles.
well, that's standard, but the point is, when you regulate, if you're going to try to regulate something, when you regulate a GE or a publicly traded corporation, you are forced in the details of the filing. The company, being a publicly traded company, has to tell you every single name of every subsidiary, that everything that they're using around the world with specificity. They have to say, in the Czech Republic, we are GE Czech. In France, we're the Label France GE or whatever we are, and they give the name, and we own 62% of that entity, or 55 or 100%. You give all these details. When you don't do that, and you have these names, Wildlife Preservation Trust International, who could possibly be against that? I mean, maybe law and order types who don't want anything to be wild. But I mean, it's just an EcoHealth Alliance. I mean, what could sound bad about that? There's eco and health, and we're in an alliance, and it's incorporated. I mean, it sounds great. Give it 15
How
million.
do you get in on this?
Yeah, on the ground floor. So it's just sad. So in New York, we've given chops out to Tish James.
Put crypto and .com, and it can't fail.
That's right. Make this the global reserve currency. Anyway,
unicorn, Charles.
Exactly, with a tulip in its mouth. So anyway, Tish James, the Attorney General here in New York, has gone after Black Lives Matter, has gone after the NRA, has gone after Trump, has not yet gone after the Clinton Foundation, but certainly should go after EcoHealth Alliance, and hasn't. If we go to the New York page, there's no filing for 19, there's no filing for 20. If we go into ProPublica, let's see if there's a filing for 19.
I was just going to show everybody Letitia James pointing at things that she's not investigating. That we won't investigate.
Oh, is Cuomo related to that? I can't investigate that.
No. Is that a Trump file? No, put that away. Okay. So what do we want to look at?
Back in ProPublica, just hit there. Yeah, and let's go back a page. What's the most recent fiscal year that they have? They somehow have in ProPublica, they have 2019.
And 2020.
Well, that's just the audit that we did, but they have the 990. And if we hit 990, what does it say?
I guess they're hiding it. Why do they have so many here?
Well, this is 990. This is for taxable operations, and there's the audit. But here 990. And the front page, it should say government grants, contributions and grants.
Sorry, let me just bring this in a way
Sure.
that we can.
Contribution and grants are 16 for the prior year, 17 for the current year. The other thing I should point out is we won't do it right now. Maybe we can do it. Yeah, maybe we can do it. If we look here at the very bottom, look, revenue less expenses for the current year, 1.4 million, right?
666.
No. But look at, for the current year, that is to say the year ended June 30th, 19, they generate total revenue less expenses, so notional profit approaching 1.4 million. They begin that period with $5,042,036 of net worth. So the number that you see is 666,408. If you subtract 1392437, you should get 5042036, and of course you don't. Just do the math very simply.
Holy cow!
Right, 1.4 million. On top of that would give you 6,442, and it's not 1.4 million. It's less light by 7,500. So it certainly wouldn't be 6666408, and this math is therefore all wrong. And
how could they do that?
Because this Armin Arustamayan is using BKD LLP. This is not this is like a child-based accounting.
If you're the chief financial officer, Charles, don't you have some like you just looked at this and in 2 seconds you're like, that's wrong. Shouldn't a CFO, even if he's not the guy doing the audit, be able to be kind of like that?
Well, I need a house for my brother.
Right. It's like, who is the CFO of this thing?
Do you have a house with a basement with a steel door? That's the kind of person they put in here. It's just ridiculous. They are not trying to tell the truth.
Where's this BKD 6th Avenue? That's going to be up
That's
in
a new
Times
one.
Square, isn't it?
That's right near the Clinton Foundation, where it used to be.
I mean, that's right up near Times Square, isn't it? 1155. Let's look at that for a second.
No, that's right near the Clinton Foundation, the old address of the Clinton Foundation. It's in the light 50s, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow, I love this. Bing. This is across the street.
Fifth Avenue. It's what is that there?
Yeah, it's 44th Street. 44th, 45th.
Is this Bryant Park here?
Yeah, over here.
Yeah. We'll So we could go visit BKD and be like, "Where's the tiger?"
No, we'd say we've got you'll get dressed up. You as I don't know what, me as some sheikh. We'll say,
Maybe like ab scam.
We're creating the Shake and Bake Foundation. We've got these governments.
Idea. No. This is a perfect idea, Charles. You could tell them that you're a wealthy Arab prince and you want to open a cannabis business and call it the Shake and Bake Foundation.
I wouldn't be able to pull that off.
Actually, there's some Dubai doner kebab thing right over here that they said was opening this weekend.
What's that? The
some restaurant.
Falafel King?
Yeah.
Oy, oy, oy. So a lot to consider. So here we have Joe Biden, deciding to open. At least he called it Memorial Day weekend. Kamala Harris, or Kamala, or however whatever you call her, she decided to tweet out, "Enjoy the long weekend," with a picture of her laughing. Like, you do remember what this weekend's all about. And by the way, on that point, to the many family members of veterans and people who have been harmed, people who fought for us, thank you. People who have loved ones that are in their families or they know of who are harmed, who are dead, who are emotionally hurt, thank you for your service. This is a special day. I remember when at a young age, I spent time with my grandfather when I was 14 in California, and he impressed upon me the importance of Memorial Day. I didn't, really think about it. I just knew it was the beginning of almost summer, but it's really important to think long and hard about the lessons of history earned on the battlefield at great cost around the world. And before we start agitating, as people are trying to do now in Congress, let's fight these people, let's fight those people, let's open up this war, let's raise tensions. We'll call Vladimir Putin a murderer.
No soul.
A guy with no soul. But I think let's meet in Switzerland. Why not? I'll be one of the first people you'll see. Let's go to Switzerland.
It's ridiculous.
I need to, top up Hunter's Swiss bank account and just gotta get a few withdrawals out of there. Just don't watch me too carefully.
I think it really was a missed opportunity having a president who was open to this idea of not saying that Putin is a heartless killer or whatever, right. And they just kept Trump from speaking to him really at all.
Yeah, and if you look at, again, I'm more of a math person than the word person, but when you look at things and you say, okay, over here I've got a possible enemy with more nuclear weapons than I have, that has 150 million people, right? And hasn't really done anything terribly aggressive.
And scramjet technology for hypersonic missiles that we don't quite have yet.
I'm just saying, but over here we have this country of 150 million people that doesn't really seem to be leading crusades around the world, far away from Russia, outside the home base, but gets really prickly when nations like ours start sending troops or people directed towards territory that used to be part of the Soviet Union.
Or where they have business, like Syria.
Right. You understand that behavior. This is 150 million, and it's a small economy. And over here we have 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion people. And it's okay for the President of the United States to have a son who took $1 billion for a fund he had no business having anything to do with, having scooped money out of Ukraine. That's okay. It's okay to be lectured to by Dianne Feinstein, who's so stupid that she had a Chinese spy driving her around in her car for 20 years and living near her, who has a husband who's built up a gigantic business in China. That's okay. It's okay for the Bush family to have extensive ties into China. It's okay for every major academic institution in this country to not only accept Chinese students, who may or may not be members of the Chinese Communist Party, but most likely are, right, to train those students, to give them access to our computers. So while the lazy American students are not in the library, they can be vacuuming up the secrets that they want, sending them back. It's okay to take money from China at all these institutions. It's okay to endorse these crazy Chinese ideas of state surveillance and cancel culture. And it's, you've got to really care about what's going on in Palestine. But when it comes to those Uyghurs in China, it's okay for them to take Muslims in China and put them in slave camps and have them churn out your sneakers so that LeBron James can run around like an idiot, lecturing everybody, about inequality when he's worth tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for playing basketball. I mean,
child's game.
One needs to kind of have a little bit more perspective here. And if we're thinking about who could really existentially hurt this country, China could.
I think they are.
Yeah, have. We have a Chinese research guy in Mandarin or Cantonese or one of the languages saying we beat America.
He's right.
Well, we'll see. It's just,
we're on our back right now.
We were on our back after Pearl Harbor, and look what happened. And so I know we've gone probably way too long here, but on a positive note, when you look at America's history, such as it has existed here, we tend to, particularly after World War I, which was a very costly battle in many ways, but for Americans and Europeans and others, we tend, until recently, to take our time going to war, and other than the war led by Bush and carried on by the Nobel laureate Obama, and then too long by President Trump, and now extended, I think, by Joe Biden or whoever is holding his strings. When you attack the United States, and when the American people figure out that we have actually been attacked, that this may have been a biological weapon, and that there could be more coming, the Chinese Communist Party, I think, runs the very substantial risk that Americans will think past party issues and say, now, wait a minute. If this COVID thing was sent here to kill people in this country and other rivals to China, you don't just say, well, okay, we'll just blame that on we'll blame that on the Garden No and Fauci. This project has been long in the making. It involves a lot of people. It involves most likely a lot of treasonous people in this country, in the media, in academia, in politics, in business.
Could even involve some big Microsoft stockholders, maybe.
Yeah, it could be. And those people need to be held to account, particularly as some of this work appears to have been done through charities. I mean, you're going to tell the Trump Foundation they need to be shut down, but it's okay to, set us up for being hit by a biological weapon by our enemies. That's okay. You can do that,
And you don't even need to pay tax on that.
Right.
Or file the proper documents.
So I'm familiar. My father is almost 95, and people of that generation, he was going to be as an enlisted guy, he was going to be from the Navy. He was set, if we hadn't dropped the bomb in Japan, he was among many other people, was going to go in to Japan and try to take control of the country at the very end of the war. And, had that happened, he might not have survived, and I wouldn't be standing here.
Who knows?
But the point is, that generation that saw the Bataan Death March, that saw the horrors that came out of Pacific Theater, the generation that witnessed the horrors in the European theater, they came away saying, you can go fuck yourselves before you think I'm going to buy a German product or a Japanese product. And similarly here, if it's not a good place to be, but we may gain some benefit out of this if our consciousness is shaken here, and we say we are not going to do business and further embolden a country that is dominated by the Chinese Communist Party. We're just not going to do it. Okay, it may not work. We may have the same problem that we have with Cuba, okay, that Cuba's still there despite all these decades of sanctions, but we are not going to let American companies transfer technology over there. It's not just going to be a polite conversation.
It's not too late, Charles. They landed a thing on Mars.
Okay, but maybe it's too late, but I don't think it is. And I don't think the Chinese, under the Communist Party, have exhibited great creativity and independence of thinking. I think it's a very rigid structure. And we have known across this country, we've known prosperity. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people have been comfortable in this country. To see that world change because a bunch of boneheads in both parties decided to suck up to the CCP when they could have risen up and stopped this from happening. So we may well have a nice turning point here, but I take the point that some of this stuff is very scary.
You didn't want to fight a war with Chinese robot dogs?
No, not particularly.
Yeah. There was another article I was looking for that said that the Department of Defense is going to start building Terminator-like AI-driven automated, robots for war because Russia and China are doing that. And immediately my mind goes to, what could possibly go wrong with that?
Right, exactly.
Did these guys ever watch these movies? They're saying it's like a Terminator-like robot. Go watch that. Because it doesn't end well.
That's right.
For us.
Right, exactly.
Well, Charles, it's been a great throwback to the in-studio, data-driven type of show. I'm still trying to build back, better, the Crowdsource the Truth properties. We're on Facebook. We got that Rumble live streaming, which is great. Odyssey offers live streaming, but there's some technical complications with each of these new things that I add require me to do something that costs money to get it over there. So I do want to take a minute to thank the generous sponsors that make the show possible. I know a lot of people think it's free to broadcast. All this stuff is free. The internet is free.
Our time.
Transcoding is free. The Vimeo accounts and all that stuff is not free. The information is free. So if people want access to it, they can, drag their asses all around the country and get crashed into and stuff and find it. But it's making these broadcasts and bringing them to people that take time and money. So I really appreciate the sponsors that make the show possible. Please go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. New features being added to the Crowdsource the Truth video server all the time. I hope it will be active on Patreon soon. They've opened up this support ticket, so it should be good. And I've got another episode, Manny Grossman, who is a Crowdsource the Truth viewer who is inspired to create his own crowdsource investigation into these Son of Sam murders, which, Charles, we're finding a lot of interesting details that people haven't discussed before that are tying into other things. These 215 children that were found in a mass grave in Canada, that's a whole other thing that, we could need a lot of investigations into a lot of stuff, but that's for another day. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great night. Enjoy Memorial Day, and thanks to all of our veterans and their families.